So here's where it starts really getting fun. Because there are certain overlaps in here that I'm not sure if I want to keep or not, I'm going to go a little bit thicker and make some of those determinations. So just like the artist did on the worksheet, which by the way is at youtube.com/C/airbrush customs. That's the alphabet that we borrowed for this, but we're changing it up a bit. The letters I've done, even though I can attribute them to that artist, I've sort of made these my own based on lettering I've done in the past. And so here's where I can really start playing around with some of the considerations like overlapping here, just to make it more dynamic. And I like to alter it. I don't want to come this way with this one, but I want to come this way and come right down into the letter. And of course that artist created his with an airbrush, so this is a little bit different. But here's where you can really start having some fun with it and making it almost look a little more abstract. So as I come in here, I want to come up and overlap here. I'm going to overlap this way. And these are all decisions and choices that you make as you draw. Because, as the word suggests, this is just an experiment. And if it doesn't work out, not a big deal, because it isn't a final piece yet. So since this one goes up there, I'm going to come this way with this one to make it a little more dynamic. Some of the overlaps are already pretty well set. I want to try and leave that circle intact. Now, this way or that way? Let's go this way. When points come together or lines come together, it causes what's called tension. So there's a lot of tension right here, visually. Also notice how when the purple mixes with the orange, it almost turns black. In places where it's yellow, if this were a painting, it would turn a muddy brownish color. I'm going to go from the X. But notice how I'm not completely overlapping. I want to leave the P mostly intact there. It's just sort of a visual, an interesting visual play, the way the letters are interacting. This is the part where you want to slow down a little bit. You don't want to rush through this part. Again, I'm overlapping here. And it's a bit of a departure from the way the other artist did it. The other artist actually had this overlapping there and this part of the P coming up to there. But I'm going to emphasize, I'm not sure if you can see it. Let's see if I can zoom in. Ooh, I can zoom in. So you can sort of see where the original shape was with this red pencil line. So I'm going to continue this line up into here and change the way the letter was from the way the original artist did it. So you can, the eye visually is going to connect these two pieces. I like that zoom feature. I forgot about that on my document camera. So let's see, where do I want to overlap here? This way? Yeah, let's overlap this way. Could have gone either way on that one. I'm going to bring this part of the E up, but not completely close it off. And I want to leave that one flowing from one into the next. I'm going to be really careful here so it doesn't close that up, because there's a ton of tension right there. Every place where these lines come together, it's causing tension. And it went right off the page. That's what I get for zooming in. Thankfully, I've got my computer showing here so I can see when I go off the page like that, usually. So again, the X is going to come down into the P. Which one should I? Let's go with the X this time. And then on this side, we'll go with the P. So it's really difficult to see which one has priority here. As long as it reads, that's the important part. So I'm going to bring the E down here, go into the P, go up on the E there. Since I did this E like this one, I'm going to change it up on this one. So rather than coming this way and continuing, I'm going to come this way and continue. And again, it could go either way. It's really making that color, it's kind of hard to see, but it's making that color look brown as the orange and the purple mix. And again, since the E, this part went in here, I'm going to change it up and go the opposite on this one. Make it come in this way. But I want to keep that one that way. So there's an interesting interplay here, the way it comes around. And be very careful not to close up that space. I want to keep it intact. So I like the way it flows. Oops, almost closed it up. When I do the final, I'm going to have to be very careful on that part. So here again, I'm going to come down into this piece, overlap there, up into the R, and then I'm going to overlap the R that way to give the R, that part of the R, precedence. But this part of the E is going to come up and go like this, just to make it interesting. So as you can tell, on this Saturday afternoon, and yes, it's Saturday afternoon and I am still at school after doing Saturday school today. This is what teachers, some of us, do for fun. I know you're probably thinking, that's not fun, Mr. Wing, that's kind of ridiculous. Well, I'm having fun, so it's a Saturday. This is what I do for fun. Yes, I lead a very boring life sometimes. Oh, goodness. As long as you're having fun, who cares? So this is where the outside really helps. The outside purple helps with the letter forms. Didn't look as much like an R a couple of minutes ago before I did this piece. And I want this one to wrap like this, and I'm really extending this R out and up here. And then I don't want to close this off either. I got to be really careful right there. Let's zoom in again so you can see what I'm talking about. Trying really hard not to close off that area, so I'm going to try and go around it and leave that R poking through. And this is where you got to be really careful. Same thing here. I'm going to leave that gap in there it's already closing up. It's hard to get precise on some of these decisions. These pens are not, you can tell that this pen has gotten dull over time, so it doesn't have that sharp of a point anymore. But I'm going to carry this T in here like this, come down there, and then mess with it a bit by coming up to it with the N here. It's just sort of a visual fun thing to do, to mess with all the shapes. And just so that you can see, next step would be to do the paint splatters. But in this case, I'm not going to use purple for the paint splatters. I'm going to use a different color so that you can continue to see all these interesting shapes in here. So this might not make sense, the way this flows in here. This one should have gone that way. But again, I'm just playing around, so I went ahead and decided to take that in two different directions. Right off the page. Back to the E. Causing some visual tension here. I'm going to go up this way. Be careful not to close off that space so it still breathes through there. Taking the E into the N, but then crossing the N back over the E here. Kind of makes it a little confusing, which is fine because this is kind of almost a visual puzzle. Might have to see if I can paint this somehow. Definitely want to take it on the computer and play around with it in Photoshop or Photopea. Photopea is a lot of fun. It's very similar to an older version of Photoshop. So that's something we will probably play around with in class. I think it will work on your netbooks, pretty sure. And what I mean by an older version of Photoshop, it's like about a 3 or 4 year old version of Photoshop, maybe even older. Has a lot of the same features and visually it looks the same. It's starting to look like a maze in here. Wouldn't that be a fun maze? Maybe we can turn that into a project. It's amazing. Yes, I said that. Dad joke. It's okay to cross over. Sort of an interesting shape in there. We could do a positive negative thing on that, but for now, and again on the final, because this is just a mock-up, I know I've said that a couple of times, but on the final we might change that up a bit. I want the M to go that way or this way? Let's go this way. There's a style of graffiti that I've done before this project years ago where the letters looked like ribbons. And so you can see this thing, it kind of looks like a ribbon as it comes up here and then goes down here. Oh, there goes my lights. Actually like the way it was with the lights off. So that ribbon feel, if it went up like this, like a piece of tape, and then went up there, again, it's just a visual thing that you do when you're playing around, or a visual thing that I do when I'm playing around, I should say, because as the word suggests, it's an experiment. So I'm thinking I might make this one available to people to color. I'll have to make a black and white version of it so that people can use it as students can use it as a coloring page. And I'll show you how that works later. I'd have to do it a little bit larger and so that I can get the paint splotches in there. Or the paint spatters, I should say. Really like the way this thing overlaps. Very dynamic. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, let's check it out. As soon as I finish these last couple of lines, I think this might be a continuous thing, almost like a maze. Let's see if it goes all the way through. Goes up to here. Let's follow it around in close-up. So it starts here. If this were a maze, goes up to there, goes through the X. Oh, two different ways to go on the P. Could go in that way or could go in this way. Goes to the E there. Oops. Goes to the E there and then follows around to the R. Oh, that's where it stops, so the R doesn't connect with the bottom. But the I goes into the M. The M goes around just barely. It's a little bit tight there. Goes into the E. Goes into the N. And goes into the T. So that could be a maze. All I got to do... Oh, wait a minute. It does go in here. Awesome. So you can actually get to the entire word if this were a maze, because the P is attached to the E right there. I did not intend for that to happen, but it's very cool. Maybe I'll make a maze out of this also. Wouldn't that be fun? Enter here and then go all the way up to there, or all the way to there. Finish line. Okay, enough fun.